So when we cross, we choose our heaven on the other side. Talk about the veil. People talk about, where they think, because of what we've been taught, that, heaven is up on the puffy clouds. Well, that's lovely. But really, heaven is whatever you choose it to be.
Welcome to Seriously Catherine, a self-confidence podcast for women who want to be taken seriously in the world of business. Here's your guest host, Brittany Demarco Furman.
This week's sponsor is Buried in Conversation through the Glenville Funeral Home. We're proud to be here and go 6 feet deep in conversation. Welcome back to the Seriously Catherine podcast with the takeover by the Undertaker. I had to do that, but for real, welcome back to Buried in Conversation with Brittany Demarco Furman as I do take over Catherine's podcast for the month of July. I hope you enjoyed our first episode. I hope it was insightful, heartfelt, and yeah, a bit fun, right? So this week I have an exciting guest, which I am, oh my gosh, I'm like tingling to just introduce her to you all. She is a psychic medium, but to me, she is like a celebrity of everything fun and magical. So we're going to get into the conversation soon, but I just want to remind you, you can drop your messages to me and I'm happy to answer later in the podcast shows and have a conversation that nobody wants to have. Later in today's episode, I'm also going to give you a business lesson of how I try to live every moment like it's my last. As a funeral director and a celebrant, you try to find the right words to create inspiration to others. But first, a hot take brought to you by Paint and Sip. Have you ever heard of face gym? I have been obsessed watching TikTok videos of these people getting their face punched out and their jaws but they get all snatched. So this is actually a new thing that's out in New York City and all those big cities where they are working up people's faces to make them trim and sculpted. But I've been doing it before it became cool. So I have a hot take on this, and just to ask the crowd, have you ever worked out your face or ever have seen the facial tissue in your body that could be absorbed and then get tighter? I have been made fun of by my husband constantly because I be in the mirror massaging my neck, doing chin-ups, literally chin-ups, and just making sure that my face never goes downwards. And now this gym that is promising to be snatched is all over TikTok and making me laugh. So I want to know if you guys have ever tried it out and if you're interested in doing it, or maybe you guys want to open the first face gym in Saratoga because I will be signing up. If not, there is mortuary Botox for when I do pass away. Well, welcome to the Seriously Catherine podcast, the takeover with me, Brittany Demarco Furman, as we go 6 feet into conversation. I am a licensed funeral director, but today we have a special guest and we will be talking about everything interesting, magical, and dead people.
Dead people. I see dead people.
She sees dead people. How do I explain and introduce you? You are a psychic medium. You are an entrepreneur. You are a podcaster.
I am, yes.
But in my eyes, you are a magical mermaid.
Thank you.
You are Katie Manning Hilton.
I am, thank you.
I am so excited for you to be here. I don't even know where to begin. I have so many great experiences with you as a friend and also as a client. And I want to tell the story that I tell everybody. So if you're not a believer, get ready for this one. So it's the story of when you first interviewed me for the podcast.
That's right. Oh, I didn't even know you. You were referred to me through Michelle Lyons Polito.
Yes.
For the show, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well,
Yep.
I'll go with it.
So Michelle's another psychic. I met her through the funeral business.
Yep.
It was such a fun experience talking to her. And she's like, you know what, you should come on the podcast.
Yep.
And I did start fangirling you. So I was like, oh my gosh, I love this woman. She is so bright, so fun. She's a psychic medium. Like, I should be in this realm. And I was just always interested. So getting to watch you and then actually being called upon to come on the podcast, I was totally fangirling. So
Oh, that's awesome.
let's see, this is back in 2020 during the pandemic.
Yep.
So the podcast was being Zoomed. And I remember just sitting down, so nervous. It was my first podcast interview ever. And you just made it so cool and collected. I had something else in the back of my head, but I was really hiding it. And after our beautiful interview, you stop the record button and you go, Brittany, are you pregnant? I found out I was pregnant less than 24 hours before we filmed that episode. I was literally like, well, how am I going to tell my mom? Like, what am I going to do? And so as I'm trying to like...
It was driving me crazy through the whole podcast. And I believe we were taping you and you were out by a pool.
I was out on my patio, yes.
Yeah. And
yes.
so I'm, looking at that and we're asking you the questions. And the whole time I'm getting, she's pregnant, she's pregnant, she's pregnant. And it was just like all psychic things. It was nagging. Like, you got to say something. Waited for the off button. And I was like, oh, you're pregnant, right?
And I just was so dumbfounded. And my mom didn't even know yet. You were just so amazing to me.
Oh,
Because
that's awesome.
when you told me that someone was telling you, tell her she's pregnant, tell her that she's pregnant, I knew it was my Mimi, like my grandma. Because like, obviously she'd be looking over me and be like, put that glass of wine down.
Right. Or you've got a big surprise coming. And probably that was more likely.
Oh my gosh. That story will always stay with me. And I always love, introducing you to people with that story. So
I love that.
Thank you for that memory. What is a psychic medium for those that don't understand what that means?
So it sounds redundant, and it is not. So the saying goes, all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums. Mm-hmm. I see the dead, and I hear the dead, and I also get information around people's lives. Things that are currently going on, pregnancies, maybe job change, move, things like that, relationship stuff. I guess I'm getting it from your family when I'm hearing those things. I'm getting that from them. So in my case, I've been like this since I was 3 years old. I'm born and raised in Rotterdam. Youngest of three, Irish Catholic family, very traditional family. Around the age of 3 years old, my mother realized I was reading her thoughts. The first time she actually recognized that I was doing this, she went to the refrigerator and was making dinner and realized she was out of milk. And she thought, I'm all out of milk. I got to go to the market and get milk. And I walked out in the kitchen and I said, we're going to go now. We're going to go get the milk. And she was like, did I say it out loud or did I think it? So you figure that's around 1969. I'm born in 1966.
You don't look it whatsoever.
Just don't
She's
ever say I
also
look
a grandmother.
I am, grandmother
like...
too. So 1969. There isn't a lot of material. There isn't, Sylvia Brown, John Edwards, that was public at that time. Bless my mother's heart. She goes to the bookmobile. So if anybody remembers bookmobiles, she put me in the cart and wheeled me up to the corner, got out a book from the bookmobile about children with psychic abilities, which was probably like in the library section of the occult. Wasn't like new age or anything. They're probably still following my mother, thinking she's starting her own cult. But anyways, and it talked about, it was a study done from Duke University, and it talked about children with psychic ability. It said that children that have it, it usually presents between the ages of 3 to 6. And that's what we now term as being indigo children, sometimes crystal children or rainbow children. The term typically is indigo children. When they hit about 6 years old, because now they've started school, they start to have too much background noise. The belief is that we will grow out of that when we hit school age. Mm-hmm. And the belief through the study was only 15% of the population has psychic ability. I 100% disagree with that. I think everybody has psychic ability. I have never met anybody who has said to me, I listened to my gut and it was wrong. It's always the other way around. I don't care if it's that they feel strongly, they've heard something, they've dreamt about it. Everybody has some form of psychic ability. If animals can have this naturally as a sixth sense, why wouldn't, if you believe in God, why wouldn't God give that to us? I think our biggest fault with that is that we don't listen to it, or we've, back during that generation, maybe told children, like, don't listen to that. That's not healthy. So I was very lucky. My mother just was kind of like, okay, whatever, she's got this. So my mother started doing things with me with flashcards where she was teaching me like a normal mom would, color, shapes, numbers. And then she realized I was guessing them before she was giving them.
Wow.
So she could conceal some of them, and she'd go, what did mommy pick now? And I'd say, it's a triangle, it's a number 3, I didn't realize that other kids weren't doing that. I also didn't realize that other kids weren't seeing dead people. So when I was sitting in like a restaurant, I'd say to my family, my mother'd go, now eat your dinner. And I'd say, there's a man here, and his name is Harold, and Harold can't swallow. And My mother would go, what? And I'd say, Harold, he's got the suspenders on. And now looking back at my childhood brain, I thought everybody in the family could see Harold. And I was referring to Harold. My father would go, what in the hell is she talking about? My mother realized that I was seeing people, and she would go up to like the front desk and she'd say, did a man die? And I'd say, he couldn't swallow. And she said, did a man die here and he couldn't swallow? And they said, oh, yes, it was the owner. And it was a story on the wall. I was too young to even read. So that became the next part of it. I didn't do it all the time, but my mother's friends even remember me playing with all the kids in the backyard, and they'd look out the back window, and they said, there's Katie standing off to the side, looking up at something, smiling and talking to somebody. That was not there. Both my kids have some ability, but my daughter has quite a bit of ability, and she did all that kind of spooky kid stuff.
And that's what I wanted to ask, too. Like, how do you know how, like, people... It's like a gene, you think, like, and how it's inherited. Maybe it's like passed on. I mean,
I definitely
you are
think
a witch.
Yeah, I am a witch. Mm-hmm. I do believe that certain family lines, certain ancestry passes it down. It's no different than genetically somebody that can play the piano or that has an affinity for music or writing or very good maybe at sports. So I think it's in that same part of your brain that would be passed down as a talent, and that everybody has it, and probably organically, or the environment that allows you to grow it is probably a huge component of it. If you never had somebody that taught you how to play tennis, but that you had other family members, you wouldn't really know. But if you had family members that believed in the afterlife and believed in special ability and to trust it, then you're going to probably go, I need to listen to that.
Yeah, and I need to pay attention because my daughter's starting to talk, and, she's like seeing, her imaginary friend. So, yeah, you're completely right. Kids with their imaginary friends, it could be their grandma they never met that's like hanging out with them, or, somebody that from their past, or, maybe they are just concocting, different energy around them.
Right.
So we're so innocent. So I feel like we're more open. I guess you could talk about like the veil. The veil's a little thinner like during that time in our life because we're kind of fresh on the planet.
Right. That's exactly why. Because they're new here and they're learning how to speak, they're able to communicate more around the ages of 3. It's not to say that they weren't having it before. So think about, even with your daughter, when she was smaller and you'd maybe be feeding her a bottle or feeding her in the high chair, did she ever stop and start laughing?
Yeah.
And looking around you and laughing, and you're kind of like, who's she looking at?
Yeah, all the time.
She can't articulate, but she's communicating with someone in spirit, which is probably, the grandmother or great-grandmother.
Since we're talking about like the veil, I remember hearing a story. You told me way back, there are children meet those that passed before. There's some people that go, I wish they met my dad, I wish they met my mom. And you've created peace for others that come to you, be like, my mom passed away, I'm really going through a hard time, I'm pregnant, she's not going to see the birth of my child and be there.
Right.
And you have just amazing comfort for them.
My feeling is, when I'm saying to someone like you, you're pregnant, your family is the one that is giving me that information. It's not just, from the atmosphere that I'm getting that. If they're giving me that information, they're already in the know. So those souls are waiting to return. Maybe they were somebody else within the family and they're being reincarnated. And your child many times will have memory of that, of their other family or another time that they were here with you.
And usually they look like them too.
Right.
Have you ever noticed that?
They have different characteristics or maybe gestures or mannerisms that are like that person that has crossed over. I do believe your family is kind of holding them and sending them back so that that they're involved with that child's life.
Oh my gosh.
You're their heaven. So when we cross, we choose our heaven on the other side. Talk about the veil. People talk about, or they think, because of what we've been taught, that, heaven is up on the puffy clouds. Well, that's lovely. But really, heaven is whatever you choose it to be. So if you choose it to be downtown Saratoga, that was where your favorite place was, and we'd go to dinner, and that's where I raised my family. Or maybe it was a 2-family home over in Albany. That's what they start to show. Those are some of their happiest times. And it doesn't mean that it's linear. It's just one existence, one place. They can be in 12 different places at once. They can be in different times, and that's what they're showing to somebody like myself, a psychic medium. To validate that, I have had sisters or family members when a loved one has passed, and one lives in California, one lives in New York, and they've both woken up or had a sense that this person passed at the same time, different time zones. That would be how that energy is working globally.
As a funeral director, I have countless stories of that when people
Yep.
come to meet with me and they had a feeling. They had to make the phone call. They had to get somewhere. It's statistics at this point for
Right.
me because I'm the one who hears when somebody just dies and I'm the front line to hear these stories and put it all together that this is not just, a coincidence here. I love talking about the heavenly signs. It's amazing to see people come with photos and they show me a rainbow in Saratoga and they see the same rainbow in Arizona at the same time.
Yep.
And it's a sign maybe when someone passes away, but when they need to have that connection. And I always ask families, like, you're going to see the signs and be open to them. And they're like, Brittany, we already have seen them. And am I crazy? Like, what do you think about this?
Oh, I 100% validate signs. I think that that's one of those amazing gifts from our loved ones in spirit. The only time we can mess that up is if we're looking for a signier sign. People will say, I want to see my mother sitting at the kitchen table, or I want to dream about them. They're probably doing their dangest to send you all different kinds of signs. It could be the lights flickering on and off. You're talking and electronics go on and off, or the TV turns up. You might get dragonflies. You'll get the rainbows. You'll get the coins everywhere. You might get smell. You might walk into your house and it smells like Gina Tay, and you're like, only my grandmother ever wore Gina Tay, and then it's gone. You no sooner get it than the sign is gone. The component with when I'm teaching psychic development classes or I'm speaking to clients, that's different about when you get a sign from a loved one is you don't just see something, you feel something. You're completely immersed in love, peace. When you get that sign, like, oh, there they are. There's another one that's called transfiguration. Spirit needs a crowd. So you might be on a beach. You could be in an airport or a mall, and you look up and you see your mother walking towards you, and you're like, oh my God, that's my mom. The biggest part of that is the feeling it immerses you with of that love. Then you look back and the person doesn't look a thing like them. For that nanosecond, they have used their energy to superimpose their image so that you can see them and know that they're always around you.
That's a powerful spirit.
That is, yes. It doesn't happen too often, but when it does, people, just like with the dream visits, they remember.
Yes, dream visits. That's something that happens to me often.
Yeah.
I hate waking up sometimes,
I know,
It's
I
sad,
know.
but, you feel that comfort and they're
Yep.
around and it's like a wash of...
You can ask for it. Sylvia Brown used to talk about that we can program our dreams. So before you go to sleep, you can ask your loved ones and your angels and your spirit guides to come in around you and to protect you. And then specific family members, a grandmother or whoever, say, I really want you to come and visit me. And then always say, allow me to remember. Because what happens is people will wake up with a vague sense that their dad was there, somebody was, and they can't quite pull the pieces of it together, but they can feel it. There's a sense of frustration. The more of that programming you do, the more likely you'll have those powerful dream visits and you'll remember them.
Oh, that's so interesting. What is like the biggest ask from people? You as a psychic medium, I'm sure people are in your inbox all the time and, you're really booked up, but like, what is like the biggest ask and question that people want you to help them with?
It's two different categories. The one category is the family member who has passed that they did not get a chance to say goodbye to. And are they okay? Are they mad at them? People holding worldly or earthly guilt, if they weren't there when their mother or father passed on, feel as if they have failed their family member in some way. So that's probably one of the number one things. And I can tell you right now, that is all pre-designed about who is going to be in the room. So even hospice workers talk about it. When they're getting ready to go, certain living energy is preventing them from making the ascension, from making that trip to the other side, to that transition. The hospice workers will say, why don't you go get a cup of coffee, go take a shower, whatever. And that's when the person decides to leave. So people feel like, oh, I sat there all that time and I let them down. No, it was planned. Your living energy didn't. And Sylvia Brown, again, used to say, when we come here, it's like a party and everybody should be in the room when we're born. When we go, it's our own journey. and we have to go alone. So yes, there might be some people there, but certain living energy is preventing them from going. So that's probably one of the number one things. They want to make sure that their loved ones are okay and that they know, and they can hear you all the time. So they know you love them.
That's the last thing to go is hearing somebody dies.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would know specifically, but yes, they can hear them. So they know, but even once they're gone, they can hear them all the time. So you're driving in your car, you're on your way to get your hair done or go to Hannaford, they can hear you. Then the other thing is, of course, relationships. So anything to do with relationships and, what's going to come for them.
Oh, yeah. So while the living, like the fun stuff. Like,
that's the other question that I get all the time.
Trying to find their soulmate. And I was listening to one of your other podcasts, and it was about the red flags and how to watch out. And
right. And I think that we know the red flags.
In your gut, yeah.
Yeah, because your gut tells you or something you think. Well, and I think I even shared it on I've been on a date. While I'm on the date, I will say, so tell me about, and I'll ask a question, and they will immediately, because I work on police cases too.
Which we have
and
to
missing,
talk about.
missing person cases and murder cases. They will go from looking right at me to start to looking away, looking up, looking over. And I go, oh, it's a lie. Whatever you're telling me about you and the ex, whatever, it's a lie.
Oh my gosh.
So as soon as it happens, you crush inside, you go, ugh. And
Excuse
then
me, I have to use the restroom.
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't come back.
And then I might ask another question just to see if the same behavior happens again. And it's 100%. Like people, they can't conceal what they're trying to portray in that. So you're like, oh, okay, got it. So that's the other thing. So another part of that is, do I believe in soulmates and twin flames? Absolutely. Do I think that we have different destinies here that we have to fulfill from other lifetimes karmically? 100%. But do I think it needs to take 2 years? No. I think you can figure it out in 2 weeks, 2 minutes, 2 hours.
How do you balance like your head? I just can only imagine. Like you're so well spoken, you're so confident, but you have spirits around you. I mean, I didn't play a trick on you, but I may have brought my grandma along and maybe some ashes with me in the sea. So I'm not even kidding.
Your grandmother was here while I was even parking the car.
Okay, good, because I needed her energy today.
Yeah, she's with you all the time. So even if you wear her perfume or whatever, she's an amazing lady, by the way. She was ahead of her time. So when I get the grandmother energy with her, she is all about family and all about everybody succeeding. So if you guys were like best friends, she shows up. The other thing she shows is, I don't know if there was, and we might have talked about this before, did she plant all the red geraniums? There's red geraniums.
No, we never talked about this before.
Oh, okay.
And yes, she did. Oh my God.
She keeps showing me her garden, and her garden looks like, summertime in Saratoga. It looks absolutely lush.
She won awards for it at the funeral home. She planted all the
Really?
flowers. Yeah, maybe she's trying to tell me I should water my flowers because actually this morning I had to throw out one of my baskets because it's
probably that's probably what it is.
Oh my gosh, she would.
And she's outside and she's showing me everything outside in the sweltering heat. So yeah, pretty amazing lady.
Oh my gosh.
With the geraniums.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so sorry for bringing her along, but
she's always with you. You didn't have to announce that. She's always with you. So how do I balance? So I'm very fortunate, as I said, growing up in a pretty normal family. Even though I had ability, nobody acted like I was special. So that's probably the first key. They'd be like, oh, that's nice. You see a dead person. Now clean up the stairs and go do your room, and study for your test. And, I had cheerleading tryouts and all those kinds of things. So only a few people around me knew that I was like this. I got married, had 2 kids, and still, was a mom. But I was the kind of mom where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and there'd be a dead person in the house and I'd be talking. So then the next day I'd be saying to my now ex-husband, yeah, there was a woman here and she was telling me this, and this about her case. And again, he'd be like, wow, okay, I'm going to pay the NIMO bill. And, so it was just normal conversation. So then moving into this realm when I worked for the Chamber of Commerce, people kind of knew that I did this, but I was known for working with the public and helping businesses grow. And again, always had a sense of that too. I'd shake somebody's hand and I'd start to get a download. So I'd have to diplomatically wait and kind of get them off to the side and say, hey, I don't know if you believe in this stuff, but I'm seeing XYZ connected with your life. And they'd be like, that's crazy. Yes. That was the next part of it. So the balance is that it just kind of organically grew that way, that yes, that's a part of me, but I still do all the normal stuff.
You know, you're just such a friendly person, so people want to be around your energy. You know, even if you just put them to the side and say, it's just like, you know, just if you don't believe it or not, just maybe watch out for this. Or if you need a little bit of advice, these people are probably following you for the rest of their life. Like, wow, thank you so much for giving me that insight.
That's so nice.
And
but part of that is, and if you're in this business, you really have to check it, is having no ego. Mm-hmm. So having no worry about outcome, if I'm seeing something and I'm getting information, I give it. Person can take it or not, or agree with it or not. I don't take it personally. I know what I get. I know who I am, and good luck.
I mean, my husband, for most of his life, was a non-believer. Obviously, after our encounter with the pregnancy, he's like, really? I was like, yeah, like it happened, and why would I make this up? And recently, you helped us with his mom who passed over. Over 2 years ago, and, you know, kind of going through a tough spot and wanted to turn to you. You know, there's religion, but for you to kind of help him have that connection to his mom. And immediately you saying that she wants you to know her hair looks great. And that was such a big concern for her. So right then and there, like a tear drops from his eyes because he's like, how would she know? How would she know that was like...
People will think it's going to be these huge messages.
Yeah.
It's not. It's never that. It's the very personal, small things.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was doing a group reading one time, and I was in Niskayuna, and a woman came in. You could tell she was nervous, but she wasn't going to say anything. I think her goal was not so much to trip me up, but to not say anything. So I did ask her name. She said her name, and immediately I started to see this woman, and then she's showing me jars of buttons. And she kept saying, buttons, buttons, buttons. And finally I look at this woman and I go, I'm so sorry. All I keep is getting is buttons and showing jars of buttons. This woman broke down crying. She said, my mother had advanced stage, I believe it was dementia or Alzheimer's, could only say a few things, and one of them was buttons. And they used to bring her buttons, and she could still do like craft work with buttons. So they were bringing those. So, I mean, that was emotional for me. So it was a validation for her that it was her mom coming through. How would I know buttons? I'm thinking, oh, great. This is going to be a total fail. And it was exactly what I had to tell that person or convey, not trying to hang my own stuff on visions I get or messages I get and just deliver the news. So when I teach psychic development classes, that's what I say to people is don't try and make sense of it, just give it. I've been to readings where I had been on the phone with my brother, Tim, and then I get to the reading and I keep hearing Tim, Tim, Tim. So finally I'll say, I keep getting the name Tim. I'm thinking it's because I just got off the phone with my brother. No, it's their son, or it was the father's name. And they're like, that's their name. One time I went to a reading. This is actually funny. And I had a friend who lives in the Carolinas. And he has a great sense of humor. And he was sending me all morning Monty Python different clips, actually even Blazing Saddles. He was sending me, because I kept saying, I'm so tired. So he kept sending me Madeline Kahn singing, I'm so tired. So I thought it was funny all morning, but then he was sending me all these things from Monty Python with the Holy Grail. And if you're a Monty Pythoner, it's classic. Like you can almost dictate every single line or repeat every single line. So I get to this reading and it's still in my head. I can hear all the lines. So I'm trying to kind of put it over to the side. So this woman comes in and she's got a bunch of things in her hands, pictures, and I can, see like she's got a shirt or something, and starts to lay everything out. And I take her hand and I said, I am so sorry. I said, I keep wanting to laugh because I keep hearing Monty Python in my head. I'm so sorry. And she went straight up and she said, have you looked at what I put on the table? And I went, no. And she said, please look at the table. It was her father that had passed away, huge Monty Python fan. The shirt, if you watch the movie, The Holy Grail, they don't really have horses. They use coconuts, and they follow behind them to make the sound of the horse. So the shirt that they had, it was for a family party. They all wore coconut shirts. So that's what was on the table, along with a couple other things. But yeah, the Knights of Nin. I could not have called that. I actually was kind of shocked. I do the Elaine, like, shut up. I can't hang my, what do I think it is? Just give the news.
You just, because you're seeing visions, you're hearing things, even smells too. Like you brought up. So you're all five senses when you're reading.
It's clairvoyance. And, it's the clairs is what they call it. So you have clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, clairscent, which is clear smelling, clairaugustience, which is clear tasting, clairaudient, which is clear hearing, clairsentience, which is clear feeling. The difference between them is objective versus subjective. So if it's subjective, it means it's inside yourself, subjective. So if I see a spirit, but nobody else in this room sees the spirit, that means it's subjective. But say we're all sitting here and we hear, hello, and it's outside. Maybe it even has resonation. It has a little bit of an echo. That is clairaudient, and it is objective. It's outside of us, that where other people have maybe even witnessed it.
Does that mean the spirit's stronger or maybe saved all its energy to project it like that?
No.
Or, okay.
No.
Just the way it comes
Just the way it
through.
happens. And maybe it has to do with the receivers. You and I can both hear it, but somebody else can't hear it because of our own ability or whatever our own block is. That's one of them. You might have it especially when you're falling asleep or waking up. It seems to be like you'll hear your name or hello, or maybe even somebody like clearing their voice, like clearing their throat. Like clairaudience is interesting because you might all of a sudden start to taste like your grandmother's food. Sauce or something like that. And you're like, oh, I should make a pot of sauce. But it also is very helpful in things that are crime scenes. So I might all of a sudden taste something that's almost like chemically, or it might be a metal taste and I know it's blood. And I can start to discern maybe how that person passed without them telling me.
Can you tell me a little bit more about some of the cases and, do they still call upon you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I never have been, I guess what I could say, like an ambulance chaser. And there are some psychics that do that. They hound the police or they go after them. If they want me, they know where to get me. So the first case I worked on was in 2006, and it was a missing person case. I wound up getting connected not only to the state police, but to the sheriff's department, and wound up working extensively with Harry Baffardi. And we had known each other in previous lives. I was working for the Chamber of Commerce. He knew my family, and he's a Marine, and my dad is a Marine. So there was a lot of, community ties. So when he realized I could do this, and I was giving accurate information, he started referring my name on other cases. So throughout the capital region, I was getting phone calls at my day job to help with cases. So I might get a phone call from the Rensselaer County Sheriff's Department and then Saratoga. And really, they utilize me as a tool. It is not like you see in the movies where the psychic comes in and goes, dun, 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 it's over here. It's really not giving any information to the psychic, might be getting names. So it validates what they already have got. So it's just another tool that they use. So since then, he's had me come in and speak to criminal justice students at Schenectady Community College for the use, like forensically, with that. But you can never admit it into court, so it's not admissible. So yes, I've done that, and they by word of mouth they give out my name. Yeah, so I still do work on cases, kind of behind the scenes. The more I've done this job, I try to not watch the news. Because it can be, as an empath, very overwhelming. And it's just almost too much. So I have to turn that off a little bit. Even crowds, a lot of times.
Because you could probably pull some things just from watching it.
Oh, yeah.
And, your heart is just, I can't imagine how your heart doesn't break over and over again.
There was a case that was featured on television. They actually found a young woman's body. And my ex-husband and I were sitting and having coffee. It was probably 5 a.m. And it was, again, almost like somebody turned a switch as I'm watching it. And I said, she didn't die of natural causes. He goes, are they going to solve it? My husband then started asking the questions. And I wound up getting connected to that case later on. And it wound up being from the law enforcement on the original case I was working on. One of the most profound, I could say, spooky incidents was on that case. I was asleep. My son was probably at the time, let's say Nicholas was like 5 years old. And we had 2 German Shepherds. I was sound asleep and I woke up. I could hear the television on. And it was kind of like, when you think about it, like old fashioned. I could hear the snow, like when the television goes to nighttime, it goes shh. And I thought, dang, he left the TV on, my husband. I started to sit up and I rolled over and the TV was off. And then I could hear the 2 dogs, the one in particular, low growling. And I said, what is it? And I looked up, and in the dark at the foot of the bed, I could see the image of a smaller person. I thought it was my son. So I said, what's the matter, sweetheart? Do you have a bloody nose? Because he was getting bloody noses. Didn't respond. Now I'm focusing in the dark on this figure. And then I realize it's not a boy. It's a girl. She looked like she was wet. Like she looked like her hair was wet, her clothing like her gown. So doing the good psychic thing, I said, okay, so you're here to give me a message. How can I help you? And she just went, like popped. She was just gone. So I kept asking. I'm sitting up sideways, and I'm like, what do you need? I'm trying to get more information. She didn't give me anything. So I thought, well, heck with that. I'm going back to sleep. And as I went to lay back down, she was right here next to me at the bed. Right. I mean, like jump scare, like, oh, I woke up, I grabbed my husband and I said, can you turn on the light, turn on the light, turn on the light? He's like, what's the matter? And I said, somebody was just here. But come to find out, she really didn't mean to scare me. She was newly crossed, could not communicate. And I had blessedly a teacher at the time say, the next time she shows up, and she will show up again, say, okay, you can't scare me. Can you communicate with me? And it's exactly what happened. She showed up a day I was home. I was getting ready for the Schenectady Christmas parade. She showed up in the house and I said, can you talk? And she just shook her head. So she had been just newly crossed over. I know, but I wound up getting other information and I wound up giving information on that case. But yeah, that was one of those ones, a jump scare where I was like, oh, I'm going back to sleep. And she's right here next to me. It was like something out of a movie. She was of a really petite stature. She almost looked like a child. It was exactly how she was described through the news. But she did come through more peaceful at later.
You're around a lot of tragedy, a lot of sadness. I know you bring so much peace to people, and it's a magical gift. Yeah, what just happened is, we really don't know what happened, but she kind of does. The book fell off the table just randomly. Nobody knocked into it. And the camera was seeing something, right?
A white image, correct?
A white image.
Yes.
And our technology started failing us. So that's really how spirits can connect easiest, right?
They like to manipulate electronics. You know, they're trying to get
the wavelengths.
Well, think about this. When they probably first were showing up during the, when people were really aware of it, we're talking going way back, to Egyptian times, they didn't have technology. They've evolved with us. I was at a reading one time, and it was at a strip club, but I was reading for the owner of the strip club, and we were talking, and it was quiet. It was October. First, we heard, I should say, the back door open to the kitchen, and we both stopped, and I said, did you hear that? And she said, yeah, nobody's here. Like that, it was almost like a suction. Nobody was there. So we're talking, and then all of a sudden you start hearing music. She says to me, are you playing music? I said, no, where is that coming from? It was Christmas music. It was her phone. Her phone had turned on. It was Pandora, and it was playing like Christmas classics. She says, I don't even know how to do that on my phone. I don't.
At a strip club, right?
At a strip club. But she said the owner who had passed away, he loved Christmas.
I feel my mouth is open this entire podcast. I'm like, Yes, but music, that happens a lot at the funeral home. The best stories are when families come to me and they say, I've been hearing our wedding song everywhere. And also, at the funeral home, music will randomly come on. I think the most beautiful scenarios, which does creep some families out, but most of them, they find peace in it. And they're like, that's her.
Yes.
We're closing the casket. We're playing Ave Maria. They're Roman Catholic. We're making it into a ceremony and making it traditional.
Right.
The music stops and it plays something out of this world. Like, maybe it's like Earth, Wind, and Fire. Maybe it's just silence because they hate music. It's just something that's their personality that comes on. It has happened to me recently 10 times in the last year and a half that I can count. That's as my job as a funeral director. I'm there when people are crossing the veil and they're there. They're still here.
So I have a question for you. This is what I would be doing. See, when I leave the house, my best friend says all the time, it's like being with Cinderella. I'm talking to butterflies and squirrels. And hello, friends. Hello, friends. If I worked in a funeral home, I would be walking in all the time saying, hello, everybody. Do you talk to everybody out loud in the funeral home?
So when I do makeup or I'm with the bodies, I will certainly talk to them and be like, you look great, and we're going to make sure that you're ready for heaven, and you're on your way to see your loved one again. Their spouses already passed before them. When the families meet me at the houses, when I do removals, I ask them what their favorite song is. So on my way back to the funeral home, we play their song.
Oh, gosh,
a lot of Frank Sinatra.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so, I want to be their spirit guide in a way.
Right.
And it's one of my favorite things to do because they had a life here, and I have to celebrate their essence. I know that we see that it is an empty shell. A lot of people find funerals cold, but it's so important to come together as the living. but also having that piece of seeing the person in their favorite dress and their favorite shade of lipstick and their favorite music playing, it really creates this,
Right.
I don't know how to explain it besides just peace. And
Yep.
you know how to move forward now. This
Yep.
new reality that they're not going to be here, but you gave them a beautiful send-off. I know we talk about their heavens usually with their family,
Right.
but if I could just channel their essence and, make
Oh,
it
I know.
special.
They appreciate that. I think that's cool.
Yeah, so, music. But hopefully we don't have any more technological problems
Hopefully.
here.
So I was talking about before so rudely was interrupted by technology.
Or a spirit.
Spirit. I teach classes,
Mm-hmm.
and probably the number one thing for people to do is actually have faith or trust what they're getting. I think a lot of times we get information and then we talk ourselves out of it. Just like what I said, listen to my gut, and it's never wrong. But they might get something too, or a download, and they might be like, I think I'm losing my mind. No, have faith in what you're getting. And then the next part of that is kind of like realtors where they say location, location, location. The next thing for somebody that wants to do any kind of psychic or healing work is meditation, meditation, meditation. You have to raise your vibration. It can't be from being somebody that smokes a lot, drinks a lot, eats poorly, and doesn't do the work, basically like your spirit energy work to kind of raise it up. You have to figure we're raising our vibration to hear them, and they've got to lower their vibration to speak to us. So there's somewhere in between. It's like the ether that is a translation. But the more work we do to raise up, it better for us to be able to get clarity and to have, more insight. So the meditation is important, and it doesn't have to be an hour-long great if you love that stuff. But if you have 5 minutes and you can do breathing work and kind of think about clearing the energy in your body, working through your chakras, and just kind of opening yourself up, the better. That's all you have to do. Yeah.
Sounds great. And you're doing workshops.
Yep, we do workshops. I do them online with a dear friend who lives in Florida, and they're Zoom. And we do psychic development 1 and 2. It's myself and Sharon Porto. We do past life regression. We do meditation. We do manifesting. And we are adding a class about how to not attract narcissists.
Okay, sign me up.
Yeah. I think that all empaths have that ability that they attract the walking wounded.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right, exactly.
How
Okay.
can we learn more about where the signups are? Or
So
learn more
I
about you?
have a bunch of shows coming up as well. So I have a show this week that is at Grapevine Farms. I'll be playing again at Vapor in August during track season. So get your tickets for Vapor if you're somebody that's in Saratoga or just coming to the area, as well as at the Holiday Inn Express towards fall. And I also have a trip booked where it's haunted. We go to different locations. So this year is Haunted Italy. We have done Haunted Ireland twice. We did North and South Ireland. We did Haunted Scotland last year. And this year is Haunted Italy. And then we're going to go back to Ireland in 2025. So I work with Connie Dyer, Pack Your Bags Travel. And she sets up these trips for me and 45 of my closest friends. We go to all these different venues that are haunted. We travel throughout the country or wherever we are, and we might go to old like churches and cemeteries and places that probably most of the public, like we were underneath a church in Ireland, we're going back, and they have mummified remains in I'm going to say it wrong, but it's St. Mission. Yeah.
What is the most unique place you've ever been? Or how about, there's so many unique places. How about the scariest? I know nothing really scares you, but really just like gave you the chills.
All right, I'll tell you a story about a young man who had gone to visit with his girlfriend, State Penn, and they do haunted tours. He did not have a background in belief of ghosts. So when they went on the tour, I did not know this when they contacted me. He was mocking everything. He's like, oh, there's a ghost over here. Oh, and he kept touching everything. Oh, you think I'm going to get the ghost now? About a week later, he started having very strange things happening in his home in Niskayuna, where things were being moved, thrown, and couldn't explain it. So the one night he's on the phone with his girlfriend who lived, I believe she lived at the time in Rotterdam, and they were on the phone. They would fall asleep talking on the phone. You know how young love is. She woke up in the middle of the night hearing growling. Her father heard it from another room and came in and said, hang up that phone. And it was clearly coming from his house. Hung up the phone. He went to the doctor's the next day. There was blood on his pillow. And he had it looked like he had burned his tongue. So he went to the doctor's, and his doctor, who was of his similar faith, said, I think you've got something else going on here, basically alluding that there was a possession. I am a minister. I'm a licensed minister, so I can perform marriages. I did that the year I got divorced, irony. But in doing that, you actually can perform exorcisms as well, baptisms. I know. Like
you do it all.
Yeah. I thought, well, all right, we'll talk to him, because the girlfriend contacted it and said, can you help us? We think something else is going on. There might be an attachment to my boyfriend. So myself and Michelle Lyons-Polito went to the house in Rotterdam. And as we're at the house in Rotterdam, the girlfriend is answering most of the questions. And he's just kind of sitting there in like a daze or a funk. And every time I'd ask him a question, the lights at the kitchen table would go, ooh. So then I turned to him again and I said, so have you ever had any experiences with this before? Any kind of hauntings or no? Ooh. Now, if anybody else talked, it didn't happen. So after the third or fourth time, Michelle was at the end of the table. I go, are you catching that? She goes, mm-hmm. So we cleared him and we cleared his home. He then was fine. But he did say, he goes, I forgot to tell you. He said, I was at State Pen and I was mocking. And he said, I think I brought it home with me. And it was not until later on. But it was even happening at his work, where the lights would go, the electricity would go on and off. And
so the spirit was attached to him.
It was definitely, you're talking about somebody in jail that he probably brought home with him. Pretty heavy energy. That was probably one of the creepiest ones.
Oh, gosh.
Locations. Probably one of the creepiest locations was Knoxville Mansion. And actually Albany Rural Cemetery, which for the most part is lovely, but one of our first trips together, we did a kind of a psychic on the scene, but we were going from location to location, and we were looking into one of the outdoor internments, where they have the gates. Mm-hmm. You would know better.
Yes.
At the same moment, Michelle and I were looking into one, and we were going to take a picture, because it kind of had like a spooky, and we saw something move away from the wall out of the shadow, and it was everything that you would expect from like Hollywood. It was hooved, had horns. I didn't know she saw it. At the same moment, we both went, whoa. D. Scott was like, what are you guys are talking about? What are you looking at? And he's we're like, no, don't. And he's leaning in. With that, we heard on the ground, like the hoof sound.
And this is all caught on the podcast,
yep.
Right?
So Nick Lee is standing over to the side, and he goes, what was that? Did somebody just drop? But you could feel it in the earth, like it was, ground. We were both like, no. We all need to get in the car, like right now. We get in the car, and Michelle did a clearing on everybody. But yeah, there was something there. And it hasn't been there since. Michelle does a lot of work with the cemeteries. It hasn't been there since. So whatever that was that day that we witnessed, that was one of those like truly frightening. She and I looked at each other like, what was that?
So where can people find Psychic on the Scene?
Psychic on the Scene, you can probably go right through. It's on all, I think now D. Scott said it's on all major platforms. So it's on Apple.
I listen on Spotify.
Yeah, and Spotify. Mm-hmm. So all you have to do is put in Psychic on the Scene, and it'll come right up.
You are like everybody. So I hope people who are listening today, they go and check it out on Spotify and Apple. And you are just amazing.
Well, thank you. And thanks for having me. Psychic on the Scene. And if you want to see where I'm going to be teaching or speaking or my shows, you can go through my website, which is www.katiemanningHilton.com, or go through my Facebook page, which is also Katie Manning. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming along.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We'll talk soon. So in today's serious business lesson brought to you by the Palette community, I like to read you a poem that I save for funerals as a funeral celebrant. It's to create comfort, but mostly create inspiration in your own life. The poem is called The Dash, and the poem is by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that the first came the date of birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time and they spent alive on earth, and now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be arranged. to be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say as you lived your dash? So I read this poem to create inspiration and to let people know that you live for today. Tomorrow's not always promised, so make sure you make it count. So this just in from Saratoga Lifestyle, their after hours. I loved this because the photo was of a monument at a cemetery. So obviously as a funeral director, I'm like, oh, let me learn more. It's about John Morrissey and his wife, Susanna. First off, I've gone to Morrissey's at the Delphi plenty of times, never even knew why it was called Morrissey's in the first place. So now that I know that his spirit's around, I'll be cheersing him up in the air with my martini. But this is so cool learning about this. I never knew this, but did you know that Saratoga Racecourse was founded by John Morrissey and his wife, Susanna, and they were Troy residents? They're actually buried at St. Peter's Cemetery in Troy, where they're both buried, and they're actually going to be having a ceremony in July honoring both of them. Susanna was a bigger part of Saratoga Racetrack, so I'm excited to listen in, and this was brought to you by Saratoga Lifestyle After Hours. So for these curious little things about the history in Saratoga, definitely check it out. Holy moly! That was a lot. That was a lot of fun. Time flies when you're having fun. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Seriously Catherine Takeover with me, The Undertaker. We have so much more content and storytelling to unravel in the next 2 episodes. So make sure you tune in next Wednesday as I come back as Brittany Demarco Furman, buried in conversation. So with love and peace, till next time.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. And if you want to connect with me, slide into my DMs on Instagram. My handle is Catherine Hover.